The optimum planting date for winter wheat in southwestern Ontario varies from region to region, but for the most part will land in the last 2 weeks of September and the first 2 weeks of October. Now for the most part, early planting usually isn't a huge concern, but there are sometimes isolated cases when early planting creates a nice lush wheat stand, and aphids are actually attracted to that wheat stand just like they are soybeans. And so when aphids come in and infect a wheat crop, they can actually spread the Barley Yellow Dwarf virus, which can be fairly detrimental to wheat yield. For the most part though, when we talk about planting date and winter wheat, we think about the concern of planting too late. Planting too late can often cause the wheat crop to not quite have enough time to set a nice crown to survive the winter, and it also depletes the seed resources that it could otherwise live off throughout the winter. So what we're looking at here in this field is winter wheat that was planted very, very late. This winter wheat was planted November 22nd, so well past that last 2 weeks of September, first 2 weeks of October optimal time range. But really, when you look across this field, you actually do see a respectable winter wheat stand. And the reason why that's able to happen is because these seeds, they likely germinated and were able to set a decent, well-respectable root system last fall, but they didn't actually develop above ground like a normal winter wheat plant would. They likely threw a leaf or two last fall, and then they've completed a couple more leaves since then as the spring weather has come about. So when you look at one of these plants, all we're seeing here is 3 leaves. There's no tillers here to speak of, and that's again just because it didn't have the time last fall to develop. So it is possible to do. One advantage of planting this late is that you still can count on seed reserves to keep these wheat plants going through the winter. If you had too much top growth, which can actually be an issue with early planting, then seed reserves are lower, and that crown root, when you're getting to that end of October, you'll lose seed reserves and you'll have not quite the crown development that you need to survive the winter. So really, this is wheat that doesn't necessarily have a crown developed, but had a lot of seed reserves to get it through the winter. And so, for whatever reason, maybe it's late soybean harvest, or conditions weren't quite fit to plant wheat in that optimal time frame, you can still establish a very respectable soybean crop, wheat crop that is. This is a field that was planted roughly October 6th, and so right in that nice window, the optimal time for winter wheat planting. And so what we're seeing here is a lot of nice greening up in this field. They've noticed that the days are getting warmer and that there's more sunshine, and so you see this nice greenness to this field. And so this is the point where a lot of growers put an early application of nitrogen on. So right when things start greening up in the spring. And so what we're seeing here is, again, that nice October 6th planting date. What we're seeing here is a nice plant. The main shoot is here. Then there's 2 tillers coming off of it too. And so these plants survived winter very nicely. There's no real plant death here to speak of. They've all done very nicely and they're off to a nice start. So here's a field that was planted October 1st. And so as you can see, a very nice stand of wheat. A lot of these plants have 3 tillers on them, so they're coming along very nicely, and the crowns and the plants are actually starting to look even more upright. So they're getting to the phase where stems will even start to elongate. And that's when nitrogen demands are at the peak for wheat. Wheat as a grass crop is very responsive to nitrogen fertilizer. A lot of people apply it in the form of urea, 28%. And ammonium thiosulfate is now gaining a lot of steam for fertilizer. But for the most part, this field looks very good. Like I said, tillers are almost all complete here, and that this wheat will, given a bit more heat, will start to elongate pretty quickly. This winter wheat field was planted September 28th, and so still nicely in that optimum planting window. But what you can tell is that because it had more time to develop last fall, this growth stage is further along. You can tell that the crown development and the upright stature of the leaves and stems in these plants is further along than some of the other fields we've been to. And it won't actually be long until stem elongation starts on these plants. That'll be the next stage of development. And that's when nitrogen is really important for the developing crop. This field was actually sprayed with 28% nitrogen just today. And so it's right when it needs it. It's going to be requiring a lot of nitrogen in the next little while.